there's something dangerous happening in America now. There's an extremist movement that does not share the basic beliefs in our democracy. Their extreme agenda, if carried out, would fundamentally alter the institutions of American democracy as we know it. They're not hiding their attacks. They're openly promoting them, attacking the free press as the enemy of the people, attacking the rule of law as an impediment, fomenting voter suppression and election subversion, banning books and burying history. Democracy means rule of the people, not rule of monarchs, not rule of the money, not rule of the mighty. Regardless of party, that means respecting free and fair elections, accepting the outcome, win or lose.
Another government shutdown. Just like the ones we've seen before, dragging on with the same people, same faces, same slogans, same name calling, and pretty much the same ultimatums. Support these programs or else. Millions of everyday Americans get held hostage, extorted into compliance. Look, in today's world, the dangers of substituting one term for another have never been higher. And trust me, in this entire series, nothing will get more dangerously twisted, more weaponized than the simple word, liberty. We've replaced real arguments with name calling. We scream fascist or commie or woke at each other instead of actually talking. Why? Because real education has collapsed. People have stopped caring enough to learn things for themselves. And that laziness, that willful ignorance, it led us straight into the trap we're about to dissect today. Throughout history, countless Robespierres have screamed themselves hoarse, literally torn their mouths apart, shouting about liberties and democracy. They built guillotines in the name of freedom. They wrote manifestos drenched in blood, all while waving the banner of liberty. But here is brutal truth most people won't touch. The word liberty has been hijacked, redefined, and sold back to us as something it was never meant to be. So before we go any further, let's get brutally clear about what we are actually seeing in the world today. The context that's staring us right in the face. Before we dive into history and the works of various revolutionaries and politicians, let's start with a straight from the textbook definition, the one you might find in any standard political philosophy book. Liberalism is a political and moral philosophy that emphasizes individual rights, liberty, consent of the governed, political equality, and the protection of private property. It prioritizes principles like freedom for arbitrary authority, belief in human progress, equality of opportunity, and the idea that the government should justify its power while protecting life, liberty, and property as core human entitlements. Rooted in Enlightenment ideas, it often advocates for democratic institutions, free markets in its classical form, and social reforms to ensure individual autonomy. A quote-unquote liberal is someone who subscribes to these ideals, typically advocating for policies that promote personal freedoms, civil rights, and limited government intervention in personal matters. If you're old enough to remember an education that included books beyond critical race theory, you're probably nodding right now. And for most of you young viewers, what I just read might come as a genuine surprise. These are the principles many of you still believe in. Roughly 17% of you watching have sworn an oath to defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Yet when you scroll through social media posts or tune into mainstream media vlogs, you can hardly recognize this version of liberalism anymore. Leon Trotsky, the Marxist revolutionary, didn't give us a neat dictionary definition of liberal, but he consistently ripped into them as representatives of bourgeois interests, people who waver and hesitate in real revolutionary moments, refusing to truly challenge capitalism. And following the same leftist path, let's address another socialist giant, Vladimir Lenin, the Bolshevik leader. He viewed liberals through a pure Marxist lens, as agents of the bourgeoisie who chase liberty and legality, but only within the safe confines of the capitalist society, never daring to uproot class exploitation. Ronald Reagan often defined liberals pejoratively as proponents of big government and misguided idealism. In his famous 1964 A Time for Choosing speech, he critiqued liberals for supporting expensive federal programs that he saw as infringing on individual freedoms. We can state that the association of a certain party with these counter-progressive views can be traced for at least 60 years back from today. A well-known quip from a 1975 interview captures his views.
Fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism. And what is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation. Well, isn't this the liberal philosophy? The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government. Get off my back, get out of my pocket.
Does this sound familiar? When did we turn the wrong way? When did the term got switched and why? The roots of this shift in terminology, where liberal morphed from a champion of individual liberty and limited government to a label for expensive state control and social engineering, can be traced back to the early 20th century in both the United States and Europe. In America, the change accelerated during the Progressive Era, around 1910-1920, when figures like Woodrow Wilson and later Franklin D. Roosevelt reframed liberalism to justify government intervention in the economy and society. What started as a classical liberalism inspired by thinkers like John Locke and Adam Smith, emphasizing free markets, personal rights, and skepticism of centralized power, evolved into modern liberalism under the New Deal in 1930s. Roosevelt's policies aimed at combating the Great Depression positioned the federal government as a benevolent force to welfare programs, regulations, and redistribution. Critics at the time, including some old-school liberals, argued this was a departure from true liberty, but the label stuck. And by mid-century, liberals in US politics largely meant support for big government solutions to social issues. Across the Atlantic, the British Labour's Party rise offers a parallel story, though not quite the clandestine 100-year program some narratives suggest. Labour's foundations were laid in 1900 as a coalition of trade unions, socialists, and intellectuals seeking to represent the working class. By 1924, they formed their first government, making a century of incremental influence by 2024, a period they themselves celebrated as a century of progress. This wasn't a shadowy master plan, but a steady push for social reforms, nationalization of industries, and welfare state expansion, often in opposition to the Conservative Party's more market-oriented stance. This ideological evolution didn't happen in a vacuum. Enter the Cold War era, where external influences amplified external shifts. Yuri Bezmenov, a former KGB propagandist who defected to the West in 1970, laid it out chillingly in his 1984 interview with G. Edward Griffin. Bezmenov described a four-stage process of ideological subversion used by Soviet intelligence to undermine free societies without firing a shot. I ask you to pay attention now. Demoralization, 15 to 20 years, corrupt education, media, and culture to erode moral standards, patriotism, and critical thinking. Bezmenov claimed this involvement infiltrating universities, unions, and Hollywood to promote relativism and self-doubt. Destabilization, 2 to 5 years, create economic, social, and political chaos through labor strikes, radical activism, and identity divisions. Crisis, up to 6 weeks, push the system to the breaking point where people demand strong intervention. Normalization, install a new order under the guise of stability, often socialistic or authoritarian. Today, we can see the plot from another powerful organization which did exactly that for 2 full generations. George Soros' influence as a form of soft power, bankrolling NGOs and media that amplify left-wing narratives, potentially eroding traditional values. The DSA, for its part, operates openly as a political organizer, not a secret cabal, though its growth from fringe to influential, with over 100,000 members by 2026, raises questions about socialism's resurgence in a nation built on individualism. So where does this leave us in 2026? The switch in terms wasn't a single wrong turn, but a gradual detour driven by economic crises, wars, and ideological battles. Reagan's prescient warning reminds us of vigilance. True progress honors freedom, not control. As we face today's divides over AI ethics or climate change and globalism, perhaps the real question is, can we reclaim liberal for its original meaning, or has the road forked too far? Who are those people? What do they do? How do we judge them? Choose terms that applies best. Textbook fascists with central government philosophy allowing some private ownership and businesses. Terrorists using violence as the means to compliance like brown shirts in 1923. 1918, Lenin gun confiscation right before the start of the Civil War. 1938, Hitler's new gun laws targeting specific groups. The very definition of irony, the working class, the middle class, the business people, the blue collars are the liberals. There is nothing wrong in being one. You are the progressives of the modern world. Precision in language is one of the most powerful defenses against confusion, manipulation, and ultimately disaster. When words lose their original meaning or get deliberately twisted, entire worldviews can be inverted without most people noticing. Those who attempt to dictate things through extortion and violence, proclaim and call you names, are whatever they are. Let us not fall for appealing headlines. Control our emotions. And remember, always ask questions.